A few years ago, if you said Bitcoin at a dinner party, someone would roll their eyes. Maybe your husband, maybe your dad, maybe your financial advisor. It's a scam, it's for criminals, it's going to zero. And now, in 2026, the President of the United States signed an executive order creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. BlackRock, the largest asset manager on the planet, launched a Bitcoin ETF and bought $217 million worth in a single quarter. The CEO of the company that holds more Bitcoin than anyone on earth says it's, and I quote, the immortal asset, and he's buying more every single day. So what changed? Nothing changed about Bitcoin. Everything changed about who's paying attention. And today, I want to make sure you're paying attention before the rest of the world catches up. This is Mom's Money Talk. I'm Elli Ezra, the mom talking money like no one ever did for you. This is for the woman who's done managing money and ready to run her life like a business. I'm not a financial advisor, but I've built companies, sat in rooms with investors, and learned how money actually works. And here's the truth. You don't have a money problem. You have a systems problem. This isn't about budgeting harder or cutting lattes. It's about spending with intention, building assets, and thinking like the CFO of your household. Because if you're a mom, you're already running a business, the business of the home. So I'm giving you the playbook, one that makes your life feel lighter, not heavier. I'm not a financial advisor, CPA, attorney, or investment professional. This show is for education, entertainment, and conversation. Nothing I say should be taken as financial, legal, tax, or investment advice. Always do your own research and talk to qualified professionals before making financial decisions for your family. I hold Bitcoin personally, and I have for a long time. This is my opinion. All right, before we get into it, subscribe or follow the show so this conversation keeps finding its way back to you. This is not a one-time pep talk. This is a new operating system. I want to say something before we go any further. Most people hear Bitcoin, they immediately shut down. They think it's too complicated, it's too risky, it's too tech bro. It's not for them. But you're not most people. You're here, you're listening. This is research, which tells me you're the kind of woman who doesn't let fear make her financial decisions. The woman who stays broke is the one who dismisses what she doesn't understand yet. The woman who builds wealth is the one who says, I don't get it yet, but I'm going to. So let's get into it. So what is Bitcoin in plain English? Let's start at the beginning because nobody ever explained this properly. Bitcoin is digital money, but not like Venmo or Apple Pay. Those are just digital versions of dollars. Bitcoin is its own currency, completely separate from any government, any bank, any country. It was created in 2009 by someone or a group using the name Satoshi Nakamoto. Nobody knows who Satoshi is. They disappeared. And they built something that nobody can control, nobody can shut down, and nobody can print more of. The last part is key. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, ever. That's it. That's the rule written into the code. No government can change it. No CEO can override it. No Federal Reserve can print more. Compare that to the US dollar, where the government has printed more money in the last 5 years than in the previous 50 combined. Every time they print more dollars, your dollars are worth a little less. That's the definition of inflation. That's why your groceries cost more. That's why your rent went up. Dollars are not buying as much. Now, Bitcoin was designed to be the opposite of that. So let's talk about the lingo, a little vocab about what people are actually saying, because the Bitcoin world has its own language and it can feel like a barrier. It's not. Here's what you need to know. Bullish. This is not just Bitcoin terms, but when someone is bullish on Bitcoin, they believe the price is going up. They're optimistic. They're buying. I'm bullish on Bitcoin means I think this is going higher and I want it. Aggressive. Bearish is the opposite. Bearish means you think the price is going down. You're skeptical. You're sitting on the sidelines or selling. I'm bearish means I don't think now is the time. Here's the thing. The smartest investors in the world, BlackRock, ARK Invest, MicroStrategy, are all publicly, loudly bullish on Bitcoin. They all think it's going up, and that's not nothing. All right, blockchain. What is blockchain? The public record book where every Bitcoin transaction is recorded. It's transparent, it's permanent, and cannot be altered. Think of it like a Google Doc that everyone can see, but nobody can edit. It doesn't have names, it has transactions. All right, wallet. You know what a wallet is, but a wallet is where you store Bitcoin. It's not physical like the one you carry in your bag. It's digital. It has a public address, like an email address, and you can share it to receive Bitcoin, and then you have a private key, which is like a password, and you never share that. So that's a wallet. Think of it like the USB, but it's specifically to hold Bitcoin. Self-custody. Holding your own Bitcoin in your own wallet without a bank or an exchange in the middle. This is the most secure way to hold Bitcoin, but it requires more responsibility. If you lose your private key, you lose your Bitcoin forever. Some of us like to have some backup, right? Self-custody, it's all on you. Exchange. What's an exchange? That's a platform where you buy and sell Bitcoin. You may have heard of Coinbase or Kraken, River. Think of it like a brokerage account for Bitcoin where you log in and you can go and you can buy some, okay? This is the easiest way to get started, is to go onto an exchange to buy it. You don't have to worry about self-custody and having it in your own wallet right away. The first thing is getting it. ETF. ETF, you've heard before, exchange traded fund. A way to get exposure to Bitcoin's price through your regular brokerage account. That's without actually owning Bitcoin directly. So BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, which is IBIT, ticker symbol, it's the biggest one. You buy it just like a stock. We'll talk more about that. Halving, okay, half, right? Every 4 years, the amount of new Bitcoin that is created gets cut in half. This is built into the code. So if there's less new supply and there's growing demand, historically, price goes up. The most recent halving was April of 2024. I love that. HODL, it's really Bitcoin slang. And it means hold on for dear life. Bitcoin slang for not selling it even when the price drops. It started as a typo in 2013, but it's really become a movement. All right, Satoshi or sats. So the smallest unit of Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin is cut into 100 million Satoshis or sats. So you don't have to buy one whole Bitcoin. You can buy $10 worth of sats. This is important, and I'll come back to this. Volatility. Bitcoin's price moves a lot. It can drop 50% and then it can triple. This is real. It's also why the returns over time have been extraordinary for people who held through those dips. All right, so how early are we? What is this all about, right? So here's a stat I want you to sit with. As of 2025, only 4% of the global population owns any Bitcoin. 4%. That's 337 million people, which sounds like a lot until you realize that's fewer people than use Snapchat. A research firm called River published a study in early 2025 that compared Bitcoin's adoption curve to the internet. And here's what they found. Bitcoin today, in 2025, when the research was posted in 2026, it's where the internet was in the year 2000. Pretty sure I got my email address in 2000 and started using the internet in 2000. In 1990, the internet had about 1% of the global population. Today, it has 68%. Bitcoin is at 4%, right at the turn of the millennium moment for the internet. And River's analysis found that Bitcoin has only achieved 3% of its maximum adoption potential. 3%. Think about what that means. If you own Bitcoin today, you are genuinely early. Not, I got in before it hit 1 million early. Early like I could have bought Amazon in 1997 early. The people who dismissed the internet in 2000 because of the dot-com crash, they missed the entire thing. I don't want that to be you with Bitcoin. So who's buying it? Okay, sure, Elli, you have some, great, but what about the smartest people in the world? Let me tell you who's been buying Bitcoin while most people were still calling it a scam. First is someone named Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy. He's the CEO of a company called Strategy. It was formerly called MicroStrategy. He started buying Bitcoin in 2020 when one Bitcoin cost around $10,000. He has not stopped buying it. As of early 2025, his company holds over 478,000 Bitcoin, worth over $46 billion. He's the single largest corporate holder of Bitcoin on the planet. Here's what he says about it. Bitcoin is the immortal asset. It's the asset that lasts 1,000 years. Every day is a good day to buy Bitcoin. If you want to 10x your money, you buy Bitcoin. If you want 100x, you buy Bitcoin with someone else's money. He compares buying Bitcoin to buying Manhattan real estate 300 years ago. You always pay a little more than the person before you, but it's always worth it. All right, let's look at someone else. Cathie Wood with ARK Invest. She runs ARK Invest, one of the most forward-thinking investment firms in the world. She's been bullish on Bitcoin for years. ARK's 2025 research projects Bitcoin's price by 2030. Bitcoin is currently around 74,000 as of this filming. Here's what the math looks like. A bear case, 300,000 per Bitcoin. Okay, so if it's 74,000, that's 4.1 times your money, a 305% gain. Not from me, Cathie Wood. Base case, 710 per Bitcoin. That's 9.6 times your money, an 859% gain. Bull case, 1.5 million per Bitcoin. That's 20x your money, a 1,927% gain. So to put that in real dollars, if you put $100 in Bitcoin today at $74,000 per one whole Bitcoin, bear case, that 100 becomes $405. At the base case, that 100 becomes $959. At the bull case, that 100 becomes $2,027. That is not a typo. $100 today could be $2,000 by 2030 in ARK's bull case. 100? Now think higher. Okay, their updated model accounting for lost and long-held coins goes even higher. Bear case, 500,000 for a Bitcoin. Base case, 1.2 million. Bull case, 2.4 million. That could be 32 times your money. Cathie Wood is bullish, very bullish. I like to listen to smart people. Love what she has to say. BlackRock. BlackRock manages $10 trillion in assets. They are the largest asset manager in the world. They spent years saying Bitcoin was too risky, too speculative, not appropriate for institutional investors. I watched them on TV discredit it. And now they launched a Bitcoin ETF. They bought $217 million worth in one single quarter. When BlackRock changes its mind, pay attention. Maybe they never changed their mind. Maybe they're just waiting. All right, U.S. government. In March 2025, President Trump signed an executive order creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The U.S. government now holds approximately 200,000 Bitcoin and has committed to not selling it. The government's in on the game. The White House called it a digital Fort Knox. The U.S. government is now a Bitcoin holder. Let that land. The U.S. government, the transaction U.S. dollars, has bought Bitcoin. All right, so let's talk about countries that have adopted Bitcoin. El Salvador. In 2021, El Salvador became the first country in the world to make Bitcoin legal tender, meaning businesses were required to accept it as payment. I have been to El Salvador. It is getting much better down there. They are doing great things. The results were mixed in terms of everyday usage, but Salvadorians still prefer dollars for daily transactions. But here's what nobody talks about. The government, the El Salvadorian government, kept buying Bitcoin. As of early 2025, El Salvador holds about 6,069 Bitcoin, and those holdings are up over 140%. The government made money. El Salvador's experiment proved something important. A country can hold Bitcoin as a reserve asset and benefit from it, even if the population isn't using it for coffee. All right, other countries. Other countries have quietly been mining Bitcoin using hydroelectric power. Norway's sovereign wealth fund has indirect Bitcoin exposure through its holdings in companies like MicroStrategy. Japan's MetaPlanet has become the MicroStrategy of Asia, aggressively accumulating Bitcoin on its corporate balance sheet. The trend is global and it's accelerating. Mamas, what more proof? And so here's, what do the critics say? And then I'll tell you what I say. Let me be honest with you. There are real criticisms of Bitcoin. I'm going to give them to you straight, and then I'll tell you why I'm not convinced. It's too volatile. Okay, true. Bitcoin can drop 50% in a matter of months. It's done this multiple times. It dropped from 69,000 in 2021 to 16,000 in 2022. That's brutal. But here's the other side. Bitcoin has also gone from $1 to $74,000 for the same Bitcoin. Every single person who held Bitcoin for any 4-year period in its history has made money. Every single one. Volatility is the price of admission for extraordinary returns. The question isn't whether it's volatile. The question is whether you can hold it through the dips. Can you handle it? Can we handle high school with our kids for 4 years? I think so. All right, next, it's bad for the environment. This one gets repeated a lot, and it was more true in the early days. But a Cambridge University study published in April 2025 found that over 52% of Bitcoin mining now runs on sustainable energy. Wind, hydro, nuclear, that's up from 37% just 3 years ago. Bitcoin mining actually uses stranded energy, power that would otherwise be wasted or vented as methane gas. Miners are increasingly capturing flared natural gas from oil fields, which is one of the most potent greenhouse gases on the planet. Bitcoin uses about 0.07% of global energy consumption. The global banking system uses way more than that. All right, next one. It has no intrinsic value. Okay, well, neither does gold. Gold's value comes from its scarcity. It comes from trust and the belief other people will want it. Bitcoin has all three. Plus, it's portable. Are we like carrying gold around? No. Carrying our phones to pay for things with digital wallet? Yes. It's also divisible. Can you cut gold bullion? Not easily. And it can be sent anywhere in the world in minutes without a bank. From me to you. All right, the government will ban it. Okay, well, the US government just created a strategic Bitcoin reserve and they bought it. They're not banning it, they're buying it, and they're creating regulation around it for adoption. So how to get exposure? So you don't really have to figure out self-custody. Here's the part I want every mom to hear. You do not have to become a crypto expert to own Bitcoin. I am not. I'm not into cryptocurrency. I'm into Bitcoin. There are multiple ways to get exposure, from the simplest to the most advanced. Option 1, buy a Bitcoin ETF through your brokerage. Say you have Fidelity or Schwab or any regular brokerage account, you can buy IBIT, which is BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, just like you'd buy any stock. You don't own Bitcoin directly, okay? You own shares in a fund that holds Bitcoin. Simple. No wallet, no private keys, no self-custody. You're thinking of it like a stock. Option 2, buy Bitcoin on an exchange. Coinbase, Kraken, River, they're the most reputable US exchanges. You create an account, click, connect your bank, buy Bitcoin directly. Your Bitcoin is held by the exchange, similar to how your brokerage holds your stocks till you sell and move it out, right? So it's just there, it's on a website. Super easy, don't get overwhelmed. Option 3, self-custody. This is where you hold your own Bitcoin in your own wallet, completely independent of any company. It's hardware. You plug it into your computer, okay? It's Ledger, Trezor, they make hard storage wallets, and you store your private keys offline, the passwords. This is the most secure option, but it requires you to be very responsible for your own keys. If you lose them, you lose your Bitcoin, but if you lose cash, it's gone. So this is for when you're ready to go deeper, okay? So how much? The DCA approach, dollar cost averaging. So here's the strategy I want you to walk away with. Dollar cost averaging, or DCA. It means you buy a fixed dollar amount on a regular schedule. Whatever, $10 a week, just like every paycheck. No matter what the price is doing, up or down. You don't try to time the market, you just buy consistently. Just auto buy. Remember, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin, because at $74,000 per Bitcoin, you might not have that sitting around, okay? But you're buying Satoshis, the tiny fractions. The 100 million Satoshis is one Bitcoin. So $50 buys you about 67,000 sats. And that's real Bitcoin. So here's what the math looks like if your goal is to accumulate one Bitcoin over time. We'll start small. 50 per week, you're stacking about 67,500 sats every week. So one full Bitcoin in about 28 and a half years. All right, you're looking for that for retirement. But that's at today's price. If the price goes up, it takes you longer. Okay, 100 a week. That's about 135,000 sats a week. One full Bitcoin takes longer. It takes about 14 years. We're still talking about today's prices. So if you put in per paycheck, so bi-weekly, say you put $100 per paycheck, about 135,000 sats, one Bitcoin in 20 and a half years. But again, today's prices will probably change. So if you make smaller buys, it's going to take you longer. If you make larger buys, you'll get there faster. That's just easy math. Now, here's the important part. These timelines, they assume the price stays at 74,000. And if ARK's base case is right and Bitcoin hits 710,000 for one Bitcoin by 2030, you don't need a full Bitcoin to change your financial picture. Even a fraction, 0.1 Bitcoin, 0.01 Bitcoin becomes really meaningful. So the goal doesn't have to be to own a whole Bitcoin. The goal is to own more today than you did yesterday. So start with whatever you can afford to lose entirely. That's how you should think about this stuff. $25, $50, $100, set it up on auto buy. Don't look at the price every day and let it stack. We like to say stack sats. Why I believe in Bitcoin? I have held Bitcoin for years, since 2017. I've watched it go up and down, watched it go up and down again. I've had people tell me I was crazy. I've had people ask why I didn't sell at the top. But here's what I believe. First of all, I believe, hold on for dear life. We're living through the early days of a new monetary system. I'm wearing this sweater that says, fix the money. The dollar is being inflated away. The banking system is controlled by a small number of institutions, and for the first time in human history, there's an asset that's scarce by design, only 21 million ever, portable, you could send it anywhere in the world in minutes, censorship resistant, no government can freeze it, transparent, every transaction is public, and decentralized, no single point of failure. Is it perfect? No. Is it volatile? Yes. Is it early? Absolutely. But I believe the woman who understands this now, who gets even a small allocation, will look back in 10 years the way people look back at buying Apple stock in 2003. So spend smart, acquire assets, and buy Bitcoin. The woman who takes the first step is the woman who builds the habit. And the habit is what builds the wealth. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to start. And if you're like me and you trust these smart institutions and these smart people, countries and governments, they know things. I trust some of that. This is Mom's Money Talk. I'm Elli Ezra, and I'm here to remind you you're not bad with money. You're probably running an entire household economy without enough support, language, or systems. So this week, spend smart, acquire assets, and run your household like the wealth-building machine it can be. Send this to a mom who's ready to stop budgeting crumbs and start owning a bakery. See you next time.